Hey everybody, welcome back to part 2 of Dave Ramsey in my Traveler's Notebook. Today we're going to specifically talk about my budget, and we're going to go in depth about that and how I came up with that and how I worked my cash envelopes and sinking funds and things like that. I wanted to give you a quick look at some past budget notebooks that I've had. This one is really old. I've got my budget, and it was color coded at the time, and same with my needs and wants were also color coded. Then I've got just some figures that I was randomly working on the side, just keeping it real. It's not pretty, but it works. And then this is my plum paper notebook with the Erin Condren cover on it that I showed you. This is a good example. As you can see, there's just lots of figures and stuff on here, but this is probably a good one to look at because this is one of the times I needed to tweak my budget, not only the categories, but the amounts as well. So it's just a work in progress always. It's not a stagnant figure. I'm going to say I probably need to do this kind of a thing about every quarter. And then I just have some notes and some figures down at the bottom and tasks I needed to get done. And then my spending over here, my tracking was also color coded. So this system works particularly well for me. It's worked well for a very long time. And so this is the system specifically that I moved over to my Traveler's Notebook that I will show you in depth in just a moment. I wanted to bring up this grid paper. This is the paper that I used for my insert for my Traveler's Notebook financial section. It's Fang commercial art paper that's gridded. I love it because it is 8 by 8, which is smaller than your normal grid paper is probably 4 by 4. And then I also love it because on the back it also has a graph. I've seen so much graph paper that has lined paper on the back, which doesn't make any sense to me. So love that. This is a sneak peek of one of my favorites for this month when I do the end of my month video. So let's go ahead and get started with the budgeting. So with budgeting, let's look at the big picture for a moment. You've got your fixed expenses and your variable expenses. Fixed expenses in my brain is anything that you're going to get in trouble for not paying. I know that's not the technical term of a fixed expense, but fixed expense for me is your mortgage. If you don't pay your rent or your mortgage, you're going to get kicked out and not have a house to live in. If you don't pay your car insurance, then you're going to get in trouble with the law. So things like that are fixed expenses, and there's not a lot of room to, adjust the amount once you have purchased something or set up your insurance. There's not a lot you can do. There are some things, of course, but for the most part, it's going to stay pretty much how it is. Then you have your variable expenses, and those are the things that you have left over for after your fixed expenses. In your variable expenses, then you'll have needs versus wants. And I will show you, as you will see in my budget, an example of that. So, and then between the different categories, you're also going to have needs versus wants in each category. For instance, your groceries, of course we need to eat. That will be a problem if we don't. But when we go to the grocery store, the majority of us buy things that we want and is not necessary to keep us alive. So a lot of leeway with that, a lot of flexibility with your variable expenses on how much you spend or not, as well as the different categories. This is where you can really just come up with what you want, and depending on how much money you have left over after you pay for your fixed expenses and your needs, then that's how much you'll have left over for your wants, and that's how you can come up with even more categories than you have before. So with my categories, I'm just going to preface this by saying these are going to be real numbers. This is my actual budget. I have seen a lot of videos with mock budgets and fake numbers, and while I completely understand why they are doing that, I appreciate people who are transparent. I think it helps me learn more and become a better person, and that is really my intent with every single video that I make, is to just help one person to have their life be better or to give them some ideas. So because of that, I would ask that you just please be kind and not be judgmental. My needs and desires are going to be different from yours. Even though we do have a lot of universal categories, there are going to be a lot of differences in the way that we live. So let's get started with the actual budget. So let me just start by saying with my categories, I have those in descending order as far as monetary value. That's just what works for me. You can alphabetize things, you can put them in order of priority on how you want them to be, whatever works, it doesn't really matter. I have that written in blue. And the next section, which is green, I have this right here is any carryover or leftover from the last paycheck will go into here. I will add the budget amount, which is, this is the each individual category amount for my budget. I add those two together, the section in green, and then I move it over to the balance section, which is in black, because you always want to be in the black. And after I add those two together, I get this balance number. The spent section is what I have spent for that particular 2-week period. I think I mentioned we get paid every 2 weeks, so we have 26 paychecks in a year. After I have spent something, then that's where I get this balance right here, which is my cash envelope balance. So this is the actual amount that I will have in each respective category in my budget cash envelopes. I hope that makes sense. So let me go ahead and describe my categories to you, how I came up with them, and just how I work things. So with the groceries, of course, that's going to be my highest amount. I'm usually never going to have any carryover with that. I have spent $45.26 so far, so my balance is $154. As you can see, I don't mess with change. I save all of my coins, and so I'm always going to be rounding up, and that's how I got the 154 figure. In case you're wondering what I do with coins or if I handle them, no, I don't. I'm always putting them in my piggy bank when I come home after I've done some shopping. So groceries is going to be, of course, anything at the grocery store. Once in a while, and I'm going to say like once a month, I go grab a salad from Chick-fil-A. We really don't go out to eat that often. We probably eat out maybe once or twice at the very most as a family, and when we have a really nice sit-down restaurant meal, that will usually come out of our family budget. So that is not included in my grocery budget here. Health is going to be anything related to my health. I think I've mentioned I have some chronic health issues that are pretty significant. So unfortunately, I have to have a health category. Many people will not have that, but this is going to include anything to do with something, a therapy or a treatment that I need that is not covered by my insurance. If I need some kind of supplements or anything like that, that will go in this health category. How I came up with this figure, kind of a twofold. What you can do is you can figure out how much you need maybe for each week or each pay period or per month. And then what I did is added all those things up, all the respective things that were in this category. And then I came up with an annual figure, because not everything is just once a month or once every 2 weeks, if that makes sense. So I had to come up with an annual figure, and then I divided that by the number of paychecks, which is 26 for us. And so that's how I got this figure. I have not spent anything so far. The majority of my spending in this category is going to come out at the first of the month. And for savings, I'm going to just say this. I think for savings, it's really more important that you're establishing a savings habit. Back in the day, when we were first starting out, we literally were so poor, you guys. I can't even tell you. We were way below poverty level. And I just felt the urgency to do some kind of savings. So I'm not kidding you guys. I started saving pennies. And I rolled them up. And I remember the moment where I had, I think, about $5 worth of pennies. And it was a huge moment for me. I was really proud of myself, because that was $5 more than we had before. We didn't have any savings. So you really just need to start small, and whatever you can do, just do something. And now look at me. I am saving bills versus coins. So it's all about progress with savings. In this category, I'm never going to have a carryover. I'm always going to spend my $75 because I'm always going to put it into my savings account. So my balance with this is always going to be zero. As you can see, these two categories right here, the majority of them are going to be in pencil, and that's because these are constantly going to be changing throughout the 2-week period. This one for sure I can always write in pen because I know I'm going to spend it, and it's always going to start and end with zero. Gifts and holiday are pretty self-explanatory. We had the majority of our birthdays and gift-giving occasions are going to be at the end of spring and summer, so that's why we have no carryover on that one. My budget is 65. I just spent 27.46, and so I have 37 left in my envelope. Now, because we are done with birthdays and such, this $65 is going to go towards our Christmas fund. So we have 8 periods left, or 8 paychecks left, and so that's how I come up with my Christmas budget. So, because Christmas is not an emergency, so that's how I also save for Christmas. Personal is just really going to be, girls are more expensive. That's going to be more beauty and hygiene type of things, makeup and hair products and stuff like that. I've got 50 for that, and I've not spent anything. Cruise is one of our goals. So this is more of a sinking fund, which I will get into in just a moment. Sinking fund for that. I will always have a carryover. So that's 400. I add 50 each paycheck. So now I have 450, and I'm never going to spend any. So this is another thing I can write in with pen. Now we want to go on a cruise in 2 years. It's actually 23 months from now. And so we figured out how much that was going to cost, divided that up by the paychecks, and that's how we got the paycheck amount for every 2 weeks, $50. Office supplies, now here's where no judgment comes in, you guys, because office supplies is my thing. I love them. I would rather buy office supplies over clothes or anything else in my budget. So this is going to be higher, and maybe even a category that people don't even have, but it's $50. I usually spend everything. So far I spent $769, and I have 42 left in my envelope. Office supplies also includes basic necessities such as stamps, computer paper, printer ink, that kind of thing. So, it is high, but it also does include some other things besides, my personal favorites. Household is anything really to do with if we need new towels, I want new curtains, if we need some cleaning products, toilet paper, that kind of thing. That is household. Usually spend most of that. That's $50. I've spent $38.15 so far, so I have 11 left in my cash envelope. Car is my car. Like I mentioned, my husband has his own checking account, so he has his own car budget in his account for his car. So this is going to be anything related to getting gas, any kind of maintenance, oil changes, things like that. So I do have quite a bit of carryover on this so far because there is a maintenance thing that I have coming up that I have kind of been saving for. Clothes is my personal clothes. Everybody else takes care of their own. So I only have 25. I think that's probably a really low figure, especially for a woman, but I don't care about clothes. Like I said, I'd rather buy office supplies, but once in a while you got to buy some socks and shoes and jeans, things like that. So my family actually knows that I have a budget for clothes, and they ask me how much I have in there, and they force me to go shopping. So it's kind of a funny thing, but they know me and love me, and they make me buy clothes once in a while, but I do have a budget for that. Marriage fund I've took upon myself, and that's because I really feel like you need to put your relationships foremost in your life. And so this is going to be anything related to, having a better relationship with my husband. So if the other day we wanted to buy a particular book that on Audible, so that was related to our marriage. So that came under that. And, any kind of fun dates or anything where you go out and it's required money that is going to help your relationship, that goes under the marriage fund. Pet is, of course, my dog, and how I came up with this figure is kind of the same as my health. I just added up all the vet visits that we had, which he usually has to only go once a year. Dog food, we probably only buy that about every 4 months, and then any medicine that he needed, which he really only needs his maintenance medicine. So that's how I came up with the annual figure and divided that, and that's how I got the $15 for my pet. He just recently went to the vet, and we bought him dog food, so that's why there's no carryover on that one. Gardening, also, we are in, obviously, the summer, so we're going to be spending most of that, and it's $10 a month for that one. I wanted to mention with the gardening, a lot of times you think, well, $10, that just doesn't add up. But I'm here to tell you, you guys, when we had our envelope in this spring, and because we have 26 paychecks and we had $10, that's $260. I'm telling you, it was so great to have that envelope. Gardening is anything to do with buying plants or seeds or supplies like tools or trellises or anything like that, any soil enhancements. It was so great to have that envelope. And that's the beauty of the system, is when you have your envelopes like this and your sinking funds, you really just don't ever have any emergencies or anything that really comes up, because you've already allotted everything that you need in one of these categories. So I wanted to bring up the difference for me between a cash envelope and a sinking fund is cash envelopes for me is like the groceries, where you're constantly going to be spending that. Every single paycheck, you're going to have the budget, and you're going to be spending the majority of that money. That to me is a cash envelope. A sinking fund is going to be more like the cruise, where it's a goal that we want, or if you have a bill that's due in like 3 to 6 months or something like that, you know it's coming up and you know that you need some money for it, but you don't have to have it all at once. That to me is more of a sinking fund. So gardening, after we're done probably with this month or the next month, the gardening one will turn into more of a sinking fund. So that's, like I said, that's the difference between the sinking fund and the cash envelopes for me. Then back to some personal information, like, do I care that people know that I have $450 for my cruise? Like, no, I really don't, because I feel like most people are going to want to take some vacation and are planning for a vacation, and this money is not sitting around in my house. It's in my savings account. So that doesn't really bother me. For groceries, I don't usually carry most of this around, so that's not really a problem. I feel like our grocery budget is probably under. Office supplies, I told you, are over, and that's just a personal thing of mine. So, I don't really care that people know that, because it's not vital financial information. Whereas I'm not, in this book that I made, the insert, I don't have, our retirement information or investment information, my husband's salary, any type of things like that, social security number, passwords, credit card numbers, things like that. I don't have that in here. So I don't really worry or feel unsafe by having just my personal budget in here. If somebody looks and I have like $37 in my pet fund, do I care that they know that? Not really. It's sitting in my house and it's $37. So if they want to rob me for $37, I'm like, don't bother. I'll just hand it to you. It's not that big of a deal. So for me, the cash envelopes haven't been a concern of mine. They worked out really well. I've never had any issues carrying cash around. I will get into the cash envelopes in another video, because this video is getting pretty long. So I think this is going to turn into a series. I didn't intend that to be, but I will get into my spending and tracking on how I do that and how that's been working for me, as well as the cash envelopes. And I think I probably will go into an in-depth look as well on my journey through Dave Ramsey's baby steps. So I hope this has helped you. Like I said, I hope that it just helps one person to kind of see how somebody else does it and how it's been working for me for a very, very long time, and just kind of take out the mystique of the cash envelopes and how to keep track of those. So anyway, I will talk to you soon in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.